Hello, I'm Sheryl McCarthy. Welcome to One to One. The late 1960s and 1970s was a seminal period for college and university student protest. Stunned by the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. and enraged by the escalation of the Vietnam War, students all over the country staged protest. Black and Puerto Rican students at the City College of New York staged a campus revolt in the spring of 1969 that would change the complexion of that campus and other City University campuses forever. Here to tell us about it are Greta, Schiller, and Andrea, Weiss, Emmy-winning filmmakers and co-directors of The 5 Demands, a documentary about that fateful spring, and Charles Powell, a civil rights attorney who was a leader of the student protest. Welcome. So, Greta and Andrea, why did you decide to make this film?
Well, I was a student at the City College of New York in the mid-'70s, and one of the reasons that attracted me to go to that school was open admissions, and the fact that it had a reputation for both academic excellence and student activism, both of which I was interested in. But no, I'd never, the whole strike, the whole way that the college had become so diverse was completely swept under the rug. No one talked about it, no one knew about it. So when someone brought, one of the young professors who was supported the struggle, brought us, pitched the story basically, and we were like, what? Okay, yeah, that's a great story, we want to tell it.
The first thing that struck me, coming through Harlem, surrounded by Harlemites, my folks, and then entering the college and finding there weren't any of my folks.
We had to have a strategy on how to open the doors for more people like us.
Black and Puerto Rican students chained the gates to City College of New York, closing it.
Shall be free, yeah. We shall be free. Everybody wanna get together and walk like you and me.
A lot of people knew about the Columbia University protests in '68. They knew about the students with the guns at Cornell. Even knew about the students in Paris, and their protests. Why do you think many people didn't know about what happened at City College?
I think there are two reasons. One is that in general, we know about the anti-war protests from the late 60s. From primarily white middle-class students were revolting, and that was what was really being taught in the history book. But in fact, there were 200 protests across the country by black students in 1968 to 1969 alone. And that history isn't really known. And I think that has to do with the general racial bias of the history books. Mm-hmm. But on top of that, there's another reason, I think, which is that I don't think the City University of New York was particularly proud of this chapter in its history. And I think open admissions, which I'm sure we'll get into, wasn't one of the demands, but nonetheless, it was the outcome of what happened in spring of '69. And for many of them, they felt this was, we had this elite status, the Harvard of the poor, et cetera, and open admissions tarnished that image. And so I think that partly we don't know that story because City University wasn't proud of it. Right. And I hope when they see our film, they'll reclaim that history, change the narrative, basically.
And that they will become proud of what was done.
They should be proud of it. You could see immediately what happened in 1969 at City College changed access to higher education across the country. The impact was so immediate and so profound.
So Charles, you were there, right in the midst of it. What were the things that built up to the takeover?
And it was actually 2 years prior when students began to start coming together and formulating a plan, for things that were, problematic for black students on the campus at that time. So if you look at the 5 demands, of course, admissions was a key factor. We had those examples of the great work that was happening in the civil rights movement, when equity was not just a modern term, we certainly wanted equality, and what better examples, than right there in the middle of Harlem, where many of the great civil rights pioneers resided.
One thing I was stunned to learn was that in 1969, right in the middle of Harlem, and the enrollment was something like 91% white.
Worse than that, I believe it was close to 97% white by the time that we formulated those demands in '68. And I don't think it changed that radically in '69. So I believe it was somewhere around 97,
even more.
percent. So those are the things that we were noticing, but it was really, the human factor. I mean, we are students, we're not being seen. There were people who didn't believe that because of our race, we actually, belonged there, that we could come in and we could compete. Not just through the SEEK program, which I'm sure we'll talk about,
Right.
but many of us were just mainstream, individuals, and we graduated on time, we persevered, and we went out and did some amazing things. So we're proud alum. That was not recognized in '68, that we even had the potential to bring anything of value to this school, and we proved them wrong.
I know in the film there is one student who talks about being in a class, and her professor tells all of the students who are in the SEEK program, which was a special program to bring in, minority students, said, well, you all stand up, and then announced to the class, well, these are people who couldn't have gotten in otherwise.
Francie Covington, she's so well spoken, and she says the most radical things in a kind of understated way.
In one class, one instructor asked all of the Sikh students to stand. And she proceeded to tell the other members of the class that we were in a special category, essentially, that we had not done the hard work and gotten the high SAT scores, and here we were now.
So the Committee of 10 got formed. What was that all about?
Each of our committee members had a group of individuals that we were responsible for. And so how that worked out beneficially is that you would get to know the very people that would go on the front line, with you. So we would study together, we would eat together, we'd meet together, we'd party together and do things, and those were the cells.
And you came up with this list of 5 demands, which is what the movie's about.
That's correct.
Just go through them briefly. What were the 5 demands?
So the most important and significant, demand was that which related to the admissions. I'm so glad that Andrea talked about the fact that it was not open admissions. Demand number 1, a separate school of Black and Puerto Rican studies.
I think you can say that just about any human endeavor. In America, the concentration has been on those people of European descent.
History is essential, to our getting especially a liberal arts education, right? So where is our history? And there was none there.
A separate orientation program for Black and Puerto Rican students.
Why did you need a different orientation from the orientation that the other students got?
Part of what was being said, you're going into classrooms, you're being ignored. You're certainly, going into orientations, and there's nothing about you, that really allows you to feel welcomed, because an orientation is a welcoming. And we also thought that there was, should be some recognition by the college that something about, our experiences should be recognized and shared with others.
A voice for Sikh students in the setting of all guidelines for the Sikh program, including the hiring and firing of all personnel.
Okay, since SEEK's the primary support area for Black and Puerto Rican students, we need to have some control about what occurs within those programs.
Of course, these are all sensible, aren't they? We were college students.
That the racial composition of all entering classes reflect the Black and Puerto Rican population of all of New York City's high schools.
Since the University of New York is, in fact, a public institution funded and financed by public monies and public funds. So we said there should be some sort of correlation. So we knew that in that period of time, statistically, 57% of the graduates of, high schools in the city of New York were, African American or Latino. So we wanted that correlation.
That Black and Puerto Rican history and Spanish language be a requirement for all education majors.
We're, training teachers who are going to go into our community to teach Black and Puerto Rican students. Might be good for them to have some awareness of what that history and culture is when they're going out there to embrace our kids. So those were the 5 demands.
Okay. So in February of 1969, the students present these 5 demands to President Gallagher. And what was the reaction? Silence?
Silence. Silence.
Yeah, silence. The truth of the matter was, he was moving very slowly, and this was a time when people wanted change. It was like we've been talking about this for 100 years. It's enough with the talk. Let's just do it.
The 5 demands did not miraculously appear a month ago. They were first formally presented to President Gallagher in October, at which time there was no response from the administration. Again in January, the Black and Puerto Rican community presented President Gallagher with the demands. He was asked to agree in principle to the validity of the demands and to set up the means by which negotiations could take place. Again, there was no response. No structure was set up for negotiations until the Black and Puerto Rican students closed down South Campus and declared themselves on strike.
The takeover actually starts on April 21st. Tell me how that jumped off.
So we actually met about 4 o'clock in the morning, and then we traveled onto the campus. We had our, little tools or equipment, so we knew that we would have placement. We had mapped it out, and we locked the gates.
How many of you all together?
There was literally only about 40 or 50 persons. We walked into the library at 6 o'clock in the morning, and there were kids there. They were studying. And there were others who, ended up staying on the campus. It must have been there overnight, because we're going through buildings and we're telling them, time for you to go. You have to leave. Many of them said, for what? We're saying, well, we're doing a takeover. And they said, a takeover of what? So we went through all of that back and forth.
So you took over the entire South Campus, basically.
Yes.
Okay. And while you were in there, were negotiations going on? Was anybody negotiating with you, or?
Bill Gallagher was a great man, but as Greta said, he didn't get us. He didn't get this. He didn't get the significance. He didn't get the timing. This was historical. You pointed out very well what happened in 68. Then you were going into 69, was 69 propelled, then the Kent State situation in Jackson State in 70 and Cambodia and all of that. So he didn't realize this was bigger than him.
Gallagher was having a lot of difficulty with the student protesters. This must have been a very frustrating situation for him. The students, in fact, burned a puppet of him in effigy. Since I was present when that happened, I remember that. And it actually made me sad, because there are very, very few presidents that I think who would have been as sympathetic to the student demands as Gallagher was.
The city university people, I think, realized that. So that's why they were saying to him, okay, take it slow. We got a plan. It's not their plan. It's going to be our plan. And then we said, this is the wake-up call. If you're not going to listen to us, then we're going to stop operations. We thought it would be, as I said in the film, for a couple of hours.
But it wound up being over
2.5 weeks.
2.5 weeks. And at what point was there some movement? The State Board of Education decided we're going to give you something. At what point?
I think as it went from day 1 into day 2. And all of a sudden, people began to start paying attention.
Gallagher. Yesterday, he agreed to 3 of the students' 5 demands and immediately ran into resistance from his faculty. Today, he was ordered to open the campus and was commended by most students for refusing to bring police on campus, saying he would rather go to jail himself. But as optimistic as he is about the black students leaving voluntarily, they show no signs of doing so. If they don't, they will soon face a court order themselves.
college campuses are sanctuaries, you know, and he honored that commitment. He did not bring the police onto that campus at any time. It was his successor who brought the police on, not President Gallagher.
And it was not a violent
Not
protest.
at all. The violence happened afterwards, where probably a police informant set the fire to Finley Hall, and the white students were attacking black women, which brought the brothers in to defend them.
There were some white students that trapped black women students at the gate, and the word got out, and we came, and there was this major altercation.
5 black women were being assaulted by about 200 white male students. We just leaped into the crowd of all of these men and started swinging. By the next day, they're talking about blacks chasing down white students, which was just the opposite.
The journalists got the story wrong in the post-strike, where they blamed the black students, whom they referred to as Negroes, for the violence. I think James Small says it all in the film. He says, we didn't come to destroy, we came to inherit. And so we were not setting fires. We were not causing violence. But you can see that there's that incredible image where he calls in, there's a bus, a city bus, and all the cops, who are all white, come off the bus. And we use that song, the black is so terrifying, what do they want? And that's the juxtaposition. It was like people were just so terrified of organized students of color.
Well, that continues today.
And that continues
Amen.
today.
Protest.
That is right, John.
Whether it's Black Lives Matter or something else.
Yeah, it continues today. And
we will have a restoration of law and order on the campus.
Black is so terrible, it's terrifying. Black is 1,000 black faces rioting and 1,000,000 white faces asking, oh my God, what do they want? Black is such a shock, it's electrifying.
There's a kind of secondary narrative going on in our film, I think, about the way the media represented what happened on campus. From the very beginning, the first thing that David Brinkley says is the students shut down the campus. They wanted the campus enrollment to be 50% from Black and Puerto Rican neighborhoods. I don't know, he had the 5 demands, I'm sure, on a cheat sheet. He couldn't get it right. He, you know, and from there, the disparity between, you know, what the students were asking for and what the students were doing and what was being reported was getting wider and wider. So by the time the violence takes place on the campus, you know, we have this montage of all these different voices saying, you know, black students wanted to fight against white students. I mean, crazy kinds of things.
Yeah. There are those students at City College who said that violence was inevitable here. Black students would want to fight against white students.
Fights between black and Puerto Rican students and those who wanted to return to their studies. Days of violence among its black and
the City College of New York, ringed by police in a frenzy of fear and violence.
Okay, so Gallagher decides he's going to resign. You get a new president who's a little tougher, claims, threatens to bring in the police.
So when he was replaced by Copeland, the first thing Copeland did was to look up all of our academic records and see who he could get rid of.
Soon we heard that there was going to be a police presence.
And they're going to take anybody and everybody out off of this campus by whatever means of force.
When there was a threat of violence, that's when we decided to leave, not just for our own sake, but for the sake of everyone, to say, we do not want this to be viewed as some sort of a violent encounter. We had a purpose, we fulfilled it, we marched out.
What happened was that other campuses, Brooklyn in particular, also Queens, but Brooklyn had a big student protest. It was kind of like wildfire. It was catching on the other campuses. They started to have their own protests. And because of the violent incident that Greta talked about with white students attacking a handful of black women and black men coming to their rescue, et cetera, that incident, and the police coming on campus, and all of these things kind of spiraled, and the administration's response, which was kind of not really thought through enough. It was a little bit like, we can't have this. This is, we've got to just put a lid on this as fast as possible. We'll give them something they didn't even ask for. Stop to all of these protests. We'll give them open admissions.
And what was that?
Open admissions meant anyone who graduated from one of the public high schools of the city could attend one of the city university campuses, colleges.
But a new concept arose, which was not a concept we were pushing, and that concept was called open admissions.
Could you define open admissions for us, please?
Open admissions means that the only requirement for entrance to college, to one of the colleges of the City University of New York, is a high school diploma. And every student who graduated this June from any high school in New York City was offered a place in one of our colleges.
How many took up the offer?
Well, an alarmingly large number.
They were totally unprepared for what happened because they were just flooded.
This was against my advice, which was that they should simply increase the SEEK program, because what the university did when it took in everybody is that it took on a situation it was not financially able to handle.
That's what happened. Open admissions was the result. And I think you could say that open admissions, even though it wasn't one of the demands, was the result of the takeover. And I think, in a way, although it had a lot of problems and it wasn't far from perfect, it was a positive result.
It was.
It was a positive result.
It did drastically increase the number of Black and Latino and other students who were admitted to not just City College, but to the City University.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I mean, even like it was funny, Stanley Nelson, our executive producer, who grew up in Harlem, he got in through open admissions. I got in through open admissions. A lot of my friends got in through open admissions.
So the point is, even though the school was underfunded, the classes were overcrowded, there weren't enough rooms. I mean, there were so many problems having to do with scarcity of resources. But nonetheless, students who got into City College or any of the City University campuses through open admissions, the ones that wanted to persevere, succeed, and made enormous contributions back to the city. In the long view, this was hugely successful.
Yeah.
That open admissions policy brought hundreds of thousands of Black and Latino people into the CUNY system.
Probably the biggest education leap for Black Americans happened at City University, especially after and immediately after the takeover. And I mean that nationally.
The really great result of open admissions, not only at the City University, but across the country, is that we've changed the story. And the expectation is if you want to go to school, you can go to school and you can succeed.
There is a reason why, of all of the colleges and universities in this country, I chose this particular school in this particular city. We represent more than 150 nationalities, just about every possible background, every color and culture, every faith and walk of life. So graduates, with your glorious diversity, you all embody the very purpose of this school's founding.
What do you hope people will take from this story, from this documentary?
For me, the core audience is the people of Harlem and the Black and brown community who don't know about this history, to feel inspired. Okay, because there's a lot of problems now. And then you can see this film and you go, wow, people did it before. People organized and made change. We can do it again. For me, I want it to be an inspiration to young people today and old people, anyone, to see a success story.
Everywhere we've gone, every campus, there are a group of students, a group of faculty that are saying, as Greta said, we got to get this right. 53 years later, we're dealing with some of the same issues: cutbacks, lack of access. I think I may have mentioned, that the counseling situation, the fact that there's an overproliferation of non-tenured you know, or regular staff people, and they're bringing in, you know, adjuncts and things of that sort. I hope we can see that connection from yesterday to today. That's what I got out of it.
It's certainly a great story, and one that I think a lot of people didn't know about until now. And now, fortunately, because of your film, they will know about it. Unfortunately, we're out of time. I'd like to thank Greta Schiller and Andrea Weiss, co-directors of The 5 Demands, and attorney Charles Powell for joining me today. For more information about the film, go to the5demandsfilm.com. And to learn about our upcoming shows, you can follow us on Twitter at 121 CUNY TV. For the City University of New York and 121, I'm Sheryl McCarthy.